So actually, I kind of want to ask, because you say you've been listening to so many Chinese podcasts versus say, and you have your own American or English podcast. What's the difference, if there is any difference?
Of how
Like,
these Chinese podcasts are
yeah,
produced.
yeah.
Or
I'm just really curious if there is, because I really haven't listened to them, to be honest.
oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, I think we can separate them into at least two categories, which is the purely Chinese podcasts versus English podcasts that are quite popular in China. But I'll start with the Chinese ones. And also sort of the trends of how Chinese people discover them and what Chinese people
yeah,
listen to.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Absolutely. I discovered at the very beginning, 2013, 14, and at the time, a lot of my friends in China, and I noticed this when I travel back to China, hang out with them, we'll be, for example, in the car together, in the cab, traveling somewhere. And as you know, the traffic in Beijing and Shanghai are just,
Yeah,
you're there
yeah,
for
I know.
hours, and it's true,
Yeah,
right? You're on the back
yeah,
seat, and
yeah. I mean, I can walk faster than the cars most of the time.
in Beijing is definitely the case. And
Yeah,
I noticed people are listening to stand-up comedy. And to clarify, so in Chinese it's 相声, so it
yeah,
is a sort of a stand-up comedy, but it's more of a like sort of a two-person
yeah,
act.
yeah.
And so it was getting really popular then. And at the time, to be honest, like
So,
I was so far removed from listening to Chinese comedies and stand
right.
up, listening to stand up comedians in China. I was just so curious because I found myself feeling a little puzzled and not really can get as engaged as some of my friends. But I was
Right.
curious to see that, first of all, Guo Degang being one of the most famous ones out there, but
Uh-huh.
also I immediately discovered like 10, 20 other people that were young, super famous, funny, that I had never ever heard of. Like you've
Mm,
never heard of them in North America.
mm.
So I got into it. And then I noticed, my goodness, the amount of downloads that are considered good in China is insane. It's
Mm.
about at least 10, 20 times the volume of what you we even talk about in North America. So,
Mm.
for example, to throw some real numbers out there, someone who's considered to be really famous here, yeah, sort of the Joe Rogan. I don't know. I almost forgot his
Okay.
name. Joe Rogan's show, which I don't really listen to in North America, claimed that he has had something like 30 million downloads like per episode, and he is the top guys here.
Right.
But if you put his number in China, it's almost nothing. Like the it's like millions and millions and tens of millions of downloads
Right.
for the podcasters on Ximalaya. So I saw
Right.
an opportunity, and let's just assume those stats are relatively real.
Yeah. So I think. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt. So there's a couple of things I really want to sort of
Sure.
touch up on. Number one is, China does have a bigger population, and there's a lot more people on the internet and using mobile, and the sort of China has this coin for addiction. So I could believe that there's more listener, but also China has this tendency to fake sort of the numbers as well. So you're probably right. There's probably definitely a lot more listeners in China just by the sheer number of people in China. I mean, the population alone is about 4 times the size of the U.S. population, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so the trends, I think it's a little crazy too. What's fascinating is, as I'm talking about this, and if your listeners are mostly in Europe and in North America, then you will get your mind blown just to hear about the things that people are doing. So number one, because Himalaya it is what we call an all-in-one platform, meaning you're not just there to do podcasting. You can also sell your services. It's like a combination, just like WeChat, which is crazy. But Ximalaya is this all-in-one. Upload your podcast. It's an audiobook distribution channel, and you can just tell any of your random stories, create multiple podcasts overnight, and then you could do voiceover on Ximalaya, like little kids and adults in their spare
Well, what
time.
do you mean by voice? You mean that you can get hired as a freelancer
The
to do voiceover?
freelancer, sorry, the freelancer part, that's like, yes, it's also Upwork and Fiverr built within
Oh,
Ximalaya.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can do two things. You can have an idea for a podcast and try to hire somebody, or you can be a podcaster who or like a writer who thinks you don't really like your voice, or you don't really want to host a show. You can
Right.
really just like kind of offload that to somebody else, completely representing your brand, your voice, your point of view. And then when I say voiceover, that is something that you'll never ever see in North America because it's so
No,
outrageous. Which is
no.
it's part of Ximalaya app. Just for fun, what they have is they have these little short videos. They even have poems for you to read that you can just get on, record directly right into your phone, and pretend that you're like a voiceover actor or actress as part of like Titanic or something. And once you're done recording, you can publish that as part of, let's just say, your audio files. It doesn't have to be a podcast. And then other people on Himalaya platform who like to listen to funny voiceover, especially as you know, with people from different parts of China with different dialects, it can be super funny.
Yeah.
At all kinds of film, not just American films, but Chinese films as well. So that's another thing. And there's another element that I will be talking about in my next course on Ximalaya soon. They call it, the direct translation is national reading, meaning China's encourage all people to read something, kind of practice reading. You have to practice reading before you practice speaking independently. And it has this huge library of Chinese poems, like novels, English equivalent of these content that you publish, and they'll actually improve your ranking as a listener or as a podcaster within Ximalaya. So I'll stop there.
Okay.